we came out of a late-night movie theater. We had this run-in with this guy, and we made it out okay. We were safe, and everything was fine, but it was just enough to make me rethink my whole position.
Yeah.
And everything from that night on changed. My whole entire life changed because I started to see from a different perspective.
Hey, if you own a gun in California, you should have an attorney that specializes in California gun laws on your speed dial. Because if you ever have legal matters that involve firearms, you need California firearm lawyer John Dillon. Especially if you have questions about red flag laws, gun registration, gun transportation, or maybe you just need to know that your guns are California compliant. Our trusted firearms attorney is John Dillon. John specializes in California gun laws. Please put his number in your phone right now, 760-642-7150. That's John Dillon, California firearms lawyer, 760-642-7150.
Okay.
Right, so what do you got?
We got a guest. Is he on the line, Brendan? I don't know if he's actually called.
He's on the phone right now with somebody. He's ordering pizza.
He's ordering pizza? All right. Well, our next guest, I believe,
we
is
got
on
him.
the line. Good. Dan he's an American entrepreneur and musician. He's the founder and president of a couple different corporations, including House Detective Inc., which is a home inspection appraisal company. But you probably know him best because he is an excellent, excellent commentator and author when it comes to Second Amendment issues. We've had him on the show before. Great guy. Just absolutely think the world of him. Dan, how are you?
Fellas, how's it going? It's going good over here.
Good. Over here? No.
Yeah, where's over there?
It's
Well, I don't know which state is worse, yours or mine. I'm in New York.
New York.
Good point. Good point.
The New York. I wonder if gun laws are as bad in the old York. I wonder if there was a battle.
I'd like to move to Old York if there is an old York.
Thanks for being on the show. There's a bunch of stuff I want to talk to you about, but you know what? I want to kick it off on something completely not gun related. You're completely, I did not prepare you for this question at all. I'm putting you on the spot.
That's okay.
But being a musician, now that Eddie is gone, tragically and sadly, it's been a few years.
Eddie
Van Halen, the king of guitar.
Yeah, it was a sad day. I got to tell you, it was a real sad day. But.
Truly, and he was such an innovator, and he's just absolutely good. The guy walks on water, no question. But now that he's gone, who's the king?
Oh, man.
He knows he's going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
There are so many great guitar players. Gary Moore, Jimmy Page, a lot of the old 70s guys. But then you get into the 80s, and you had guys like Steve Vai and Vito Bratta and what's his name from Dokken? I can't think of it. George Lynch from Dokken.
George Lynch, yeah.
You had the classical guys like Yngwie Malmsteen. There's so many great guitar players. I can't even say. But the thing about Eddie was he stood out among all of them because his style and his sound was so unique. And not that the other guys weren't, but he was just really, really different. He was self-taught. He had a very almost unorthodox way of playing guitar. He really brought tapping alive, and he did so many great things with guitar, and his tone was always perfect. And he did it on this Frankenstein Kramer that he built from scrap, from what I understand. So he was incredible. I was always a big Eddie Van Halen fan, but I was also a big Steve Vai fan. Now, Steve Vai, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Steve Vai at all. He played in David Lee Roth's band.
Sure.
After David Lee Roth left Van Halen. Now, Steve Vai was probably the most interesting guitar player because the stuff he did was, you never heard those sounds coming out of a guitar before. He would take that whammy bar, he'd pull it up a step and a half, he would dive bomb, he would make these crazy weird sounds that nobody could ever reproduce. So Steve Vai always kind of sticks in my mind.
And so Jimmy Page is kind of like the godfather of guitar.
Yeah.
Like he did everything, and
he wrote the book.
He wrote the book. He was like, and then like you said, Eddie was so innovative. I think that's the word. He's so innovative that everybody. I don't know anybody that picked up a guitar after Eddie was inspired by Eddie or inspired by somebody who was inspired by. I mean, he was just so phenomenally amazing. But is there anybody putting out music right now that you're just like, okay, this guy's the reigning king?
Well, once you leave the '80s, what happens? I played in hair bands back in the '80s, and so that I'm showing my age now. But once we left the '80s and grunge came in, it devastated us. I mean, we were shocked. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to go. We didn't know what clubs to play. We were just a mess because this grunge wave just kind of came over the country. It came and went. Yeah. I knew it wasn't going to last forever, but it was really powerful, and it wiped metal off the map for a moment. So now a lot of these bands are coming back, though. It's pretty interesting to watch Iron Maiden come back, Judas Priest. I'm like, what the hell? And Kiss was always one of my favorite bands. Ted Nugent just got done touring. Ted Nugent, I mean, how much more American rock and roll guitar player do you get than Ted Nugent?
Uncle Ted, man. I met him at an NRA convention in Pittsburgh, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, something like that. And because he was there performing, I think he was on the board for a while. I think he was on the NRA board.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
And he, we had these name tags on that told you, your name and then where you were from. And I went up and I'm just like, hey, Ted Nugent, gosh, I've liked you for decades. It's what an honor and pleasure it is to me, or whatever I said. And he looked down at my name tag and he goes, "Oh, California, you're in the belly of the beast, brother." And then just kept walking. And I was like, this is the coolest moment of my whole life.
I've been in touch with his PR rep, the woman who I don't know, I guess she's his PR, and she handles his businesses and his business and stuff. She's a wonderful woman, and she's been very communicative with me over email and stuff. I'm hoping to get on Ted's show and talk with him because he doesn't know this, but when let's say when I first learned about the female anatomy, Double Live Gonzo was playing in the background, so I always felt like Ted was cheering me on.
Nice.
But yeah, no, Ted Nugent, awesome.
He was in spirit, even if he was cheering you on. Good old Uncle Ted. So, okay, let's talk about guns now. That was fun, though. That was a good conversation. By the way, my vote for Guitar God right now, someone actually still putting out music and is still like the king of the fretboard, Nuno Bettencourt.
Oh God, I didn't even think about Nuno Bettencourt. But Paul Gilbert from Mr. Big, like, jeez, these guys. Yeah, Nuno, incredible.
Yeah.
That's Paul Gilbert. Mr. Big was probably one of the best rock bands from that era, late '80s into the early '90s, I guess.
Billy Sheehan's a gun guy.
Yeah, and Billy Sheehan, kind of he played a lot of the nightclubs that I ended up playing. I came a little bit after him in age, but he was from Buffalo, New York.
Yep.
And so we have actually some friends in common, me and Billy Sheehan. I've never actually met him, but incredible bass player.
Dave and I got to interview him. He popped up on Orange County Gun Owners Facebook page. And I reached out to him. I'm like, wait, is this the Billy Sheehan? And he's like, yep. And he's a gun guy. And he was just moving from California to Nashville. And that was pretty cool. So I got him on the radio. I got to talk to him about we didn't really talk about guns much. We talked about his career, but he was a super nice guy. Anyway, okay, all right. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. At some point, we got to
get... One other thing, just for people to listen to some of the old Mr. Big stuff with Billy Sheehan, the live concerts would blow you away. Daddy Brother, stuff like that. There's some really kick-ass songs. Anyway, go ahead.
We got at some point, Dan, we have to talk about guns. All right, so one of the things we wanted to talk about, we just had out here in California, they basically outlawed gun shows. I don't know if that's something you followed, but they, all the gun shows were on state property. So the state came in and said, well, we're not going to let gun shows legally operate on state property. Well, there really aren't a lot of places for gun shows to operate other than these fairgrounds. You need a big, huge warehouse. You need a bunch of parking. So it took us a long time, but we now have a gun show again, and we're growing it, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it in the show. But what I wanted to talk to you about was, gun grabbers. They like to subvert the meaning of terms. They like to promote their narrative by using their terminology, which I don't think our side is nearly as good as they are at doing that. And they come up with gun show loophole and gun violence and everything that they do. What are your thoughts on that? What are some of the worst ones in your opinion, or what's your thought on the whole subject?
Well, first of all, let me just address the gun show thing real quick.
Sure.
Here where I live in Saratoga Springs, New York, just south of the Adirondack Mountains, beautiful place, beautiful town, but it's run by a bunch of Democrats. And what they did to shut down the gun show, the one big gun show that would come to our town was at the city center. It was the only place big enough because it had parking and it had everything.
Right.
And what they did was they changed the internal city code to say no guns or ammo to be sold on city property. That was their little way of running the gun show out of town. So they're scoundrels. Anyway, now that I got that off my chest, we'll talk about terminology. There's so many. The narrative is probably the most important thing that I talk about, because I want people to understand that this narrative, this anti-gun narrative, is what's shaping the way we think about guns in America. So we could talk about all the terms. We could talk about assault weapon. Remember, Dianne Feinstein brought the AR-15 out, and she showed this so-called assault weapon. She said, this is, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, and this is the problem. This is what's causing all these deaths. And they labeled it, the term was probably around, but they really made it mainstream during the Clinton era.
Yep.
Assault weapon. That was to scare Sally's soccer mom, and it did, because she didn't know any better. She doesn't know what a semi-auto is. Hillary Clinton would continue to say these things, spray bullets, knowing damn well that they didn't, knowing the difference between semi and full auto, but they would still create this scary narrative for people who didn't know any better, because they wanted the support for the politicians who promised them safety, because they're scared. Politicians say, well, we'll make you safe. We're going to ban these things. So the terminology is super important to them. If we debunk it and we can actually help people understand that they're being tricked, game over. But we haven't been able to do that yet. I've been trying. If notice also terms like weapons of war.
Right.
Hillary Clinton and Obama were using that for a while, but it was a little over the top. Weapons of war, it was a little over the top, so they didn't use it forever. They stopped using it. Now they're kind of bringing it back, resurrecting it a little bit. But
I think, Dan, I think you're right. I think it was just over the top, that weapons of war thing. I think people kind of saw through it. I drive a Jeep. That's a weapon of war. But all right, look, hang out, Dan. We're gonna come right back to that thought. I really like where you're going.
Hey, if you listen to a Gun Owners Radio, you know how I feel about our current government and financial situation. So it's no secret I'm a big believer in diversifying your money with precious metal like gold and silver. But when it comes to buying precious metal, you need the right company in your corner. That's why we're partnered with the top-rated precious metal company, Goldco, because reputations do matter. Goldco is 6 times Inc. 5000 winner, 2022 Company of the Year, and they help people like you and me place over $2 billion in gold and silver. And right now, they're offering Gun Owners Radio supporters up to $10,000 in bonus silver when opening a qualified IRA account. This is your opportunity to protect yourself from an out-of-control, corrupt government. Don't pass it up. Grab your phone today and give Goldco a call. Take action today so you don't regret it tomorrow. Call Goldco at 855-612-6354. That's 855-612-6354. And please tell them you heard it right here on Gun Owners Radio.
So, Dan, we're talking about terminology. We're talking about how the gun grabbers do a really good job of making up scary terms so that people feel safe. And what's the old saying? Those who'd give up freedom for safety deserve neither. Right? Isn't that how it goes, or something along those lines?
Yeah, it is definitely something like that, and that's what it kind of defines the two ideologies here in America. You have on the political left, you have people who are willing to give up their freedom for what they perceive to be safety, and then on the political right, you have people who are willing to give up their safety for freedom because we know we can take care of ourselves, and we're willing to do it. So it's the clash of the ideologies, really, is what it is. But the terminology really helps push the people who are easy to manipulate over to that side and get them supporting gun control laws and gun restrictions. So, we talked about assault weapon, we talked about weapons of war, but the big daddy term is gun violence.
Yeah.
This term, gun violence, when I first really understood what the strategy behind it was, it's devastating because what it is, it's a really powerful term. When you take the word gun and you put it next to the word violence, you are creating a scenario in the minds of people that just doesn't exist, but is scary as hell. We all know what a gun is, and we all know what violence is. But violence is a behavior. If you look the word up in the dictionary, it's a behavior, and a behavior can only be acted out by a person or an animal. There's no way guns can be violent. There's no such thing as gun violence. It just doesn't exist. But they create this term so you can fabricate in your mind guns being violent and almost take the human element out of the equation. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And it works.
Right, because we're never getting rid of violence. Violence has been around since, Cain and Abel, right? It's been around for thousands of years. It's unfortunately the ugliest part of human nature. But you can get rid of guns. You can't get rid of violence. You can't go in and physically remove violence, but you can go in and physically remove guns. So no matter what, if you say, hey, we're going to stop gun violence, we're going to set up a committee and they're going to figure out how to stop gun violence, they're never going to focus on violence. The focus is always going to be on guns.
Right, and I don't even like to use the word. The term, I can't even use their terms anymore. I won't use them. I'll use them to talk about it.
Yeah.
But when I hear gun owners at the range talking about assault weapons, I cringe. When I hear people say, gun violence, I cringe because I know this stuff is made up, and I know it's created for one purpose, and that is to disarm and make helpless American citizens. That's the purpose. And it's like Pavlov's dogs. Pavlov's dogs, he would ring the bell and the dogs would salivate, right? We've got people trained in this country so badly, or so good rather, that you can say the word assault weapon or gun violence and they're instantly fearful. And it's kind of like Pavlov's dogs, where it's like a stimulus response. You give them the stimulus, show them the AR-15, show them the violence on TV, and then run the AR-15 across the TV screen, and people instantly become fearful. And it's almost a visceral for some of these people who don't know any better. And that's the.
Let me get your advice here, because there's something I run into, and there's something I deal with. I deal with it as effectively as I can. But I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on how to best deal with this. When I'm talking with somebody, reporter, politician, or even activist or whatever, and there is terminology that they use: gun violence, assault weapon, whatever. I've found that if I take the time. First off, if I use a better term, they kind of glaze over. Like they don't. Wait a minute. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Right.
But if I stop and try to explain, like, well, I don't use that term because they start to split hairs. They start getting defensive. So I find myself a lot of the times just going, hey, you know what? I'm just going to use their terminology. I'm going to continue to make my case, but I'm just going to use their terminology. Because it's easy. And I'm not sure that's the best idea, but what are your thoughts? I guess here's the question, Dan. If you're talking to somebody and they're used to the bad terminology and you want to introduce them to new terminology without, sidetracking the conversation, what's your advice?
Sure. If somebody says, well, what do you, Mr. Gun Owner, Mr. Gun Advocate, what do you plan to do to fix, gun violence in this country? And the first thing I'll say is, well, okay, you and I both know, logically, we're both logical thinking people, that there's no such thing as gun violence, right? We're talking about human violence, right? And they'll usually say, well, yeah. But guns, but if we can get rid of guns, yeah, I know all that, I know. But what we're really talking about is human violence. And I'll give you the fact that human violence is acted out with a gun. I'll give you that. Yeah, okay, so there's a kind of an agreement. So we kind of create an agreement that really gun violence doesn't exist. What we're talking about is human violence, and they may or may not use a gun. They may use a gun or a knife or whatever. But the first step, I think, is to just help them realize that what they're talking, that they don't really know what they're talking about, and help them realize that the violence is not the gun. So if we can help them, in their mind, separate the violence from the gun and actually place the violence on the human being, now we're talking about a completely different topic.
Right.
We're not talking about gun laws. We're talking about keeping criminals in jail. So you can, by helping them see it, you can take the conversation into where it should be going all along.
Exactly. And here's how committed they are to this, Dan. They did a study, the County Board of Supervisors, which it's like the city council for the entire county is the County Board of Supervisors. And they contracted with an agency that's heavily biased, and they studied gun violence. They wanted to reduce gun violence, and they found out that 70% of quote unquote gun violence were older white guys in East County, San Diego, who were committing suicide, and 30% were career criminals in high crime neighborhoods. Probably killing other career criminals. That's what they found out, which is exactly what we've been saying all along. Yeah. And they came up with this package of regulations. There were like 12 or so. And like of these 12, like 8 of them were, let's fund a suicide hotline. Let's fund organizations that help keep kids out of crime. Let's come up with steps that help people exit a life of crime and enter a life of productivity. So, 8 of these 12 or whatever were good. And one of them was kind of this neutral, let's make gun locks free for people. Okay, whatever. So, okay, that's not, So 8 of them, not that bad. But then the other 4 were like, hey, let's set up a bureaucracy that helps make suggestions on how we can, stop gun violence. Basically, let's set up a government office that suggests more and more ways to ban guns. Is really what it was. So,
they have to have suicides in there. They have to use suicides, and we know by looking at Australia, the 2 major gun bans in Australia were done under the guise of suicide. And after the gun ban, suicide, the trajectory of suicide didn't even change. Didn't change,
yeah.
And so we know that gun-related deaths. I like to use the term gun-related deaths rather than gun violence because it makes more sense. Gun-related deaths. Okay, we can use that.
Yeah.
But with gun-related deaths, 60%, or like you said, is suicides. But we have to take those out. But they don't want to take those suicides out. They love having the suicides in there because it makes that number larger and it gives them more to argue with. But the truth is, we can't categorize suicides as gun-related deaths or their so-called gun violence because we know that if someone wants to commit suicide, they're going to do it, regardless of whether they have a gun or not. They'll just find other means.
Right. Jump off a bridge, take pills. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So we can't attach suicides to the gun-related death number, which is something like 35,000 or whatever a year. We can't because it just doesn't make sense when you understand that taking guns away from suicide people doesn't stop them.
Right.
It's not the gun causing them to commit suicide, which is what they want you to think. So I take those numbers right out. When you take the 60% suicides out, you're down to about 14,400 gun-related deaths in America, and the vast majority of those are gang-related.
Yep.
And some are law enforcement, good guys killing bad guys in the line of duty. And so what we're really talking about is criminals. using guns to hurt people. And it's a small number in this country, but it's still. But let's work on the criminals.
Let's work on the criminals. And here's how committed they are to the idea of your gun is bad and you being a gun owner makes you a bad person. They were so committed that there were half the board were pro Second Amendment, the other half were anti Second Amendment. It was literally half and half. And what they could have done is they could have said, hey, you know what? These 8 initiatives, that help prevent suicide, that help prevent kids from being criminals, that help prevent, these useful, 8 out of 12, they wouldn't pass those. It was all or nothing. They were like, look, we want the anti-gun stuff in there, or we're not going to pass any piece of this. But anyway,
we know what they really want.
Yeah, they want
to disarm us.
Hang in there, Dan. Can you do one more segment with us?
Oh, sure thing.
All right, brother.
Hey, have you ever wanted to get a pilot's license? Well, here in San Diego, pilots can fly almost every day, which makes San Diego one of the best places to learn how to fly in the world. Learn to fly with the San Diego Flight Training International. Check out this deal just for gun owner radio listeners. You get 1 hour of ground school, 1 hour of flight with an instructor. Yeah, you even get to fly. Normally that's a $400 charge, but for listeners, it's $350. And getting started is real easy. Give them a call, 858-569-1822, or you can go to Learn to Fly with SDFTI, or I just call them, 858-569-1822, and make sure you tell them you heard it right here on Gun Owners Radio.
So, Dan, you were saying we know what their real agenda is, and I think what we both know is they're just trying to get rid of you. They're trying to take your guns away. They don't want you to have guns. Period.
And, it's a shame that we have people living among us who are trying to violate our rights. These are our next door neighbor, the liberal who may live in the apartment building with you, the maybe even some of your friends, people that you know, maybe even family members. These are people who have been so indoctrinated to fear guns and hate the idea that other people can have them, that they will do anything to violate your rights so they either feel safe or feel justified in their political behavior, whatever you want to call it. But the key thing I think that I focus on a lot is we talk about the terminology, but where does the terminology go? It goes to the emotions of the person they're trying to influence, and the two emotions that are used all the time when it comes to guns, when it comes to a lot of political stuff, is fear and hate. This is why Dianne Feinstein runs that AR-15 across the TV screen. This is why, you'll see after a school killing, you'll see them talking about, bump stocks or, magazine capacity or whatever. It's because they're trying to create fear of guns, and it works for people who don't know any better. But the other piece that I always focus on is the hatred that is generated toward us, toward gun owners, toward the firearms community, toward advocates, toward Second Amendment advocates, and the gun rights groups. They develop a hatred toward us. They create scenarios like we don't care about the children. We want to see babies die, and all this nonsense. And people who don't know any better will say they literally start to hate us because they believe that we're recklessly and intentionally putting everyone in danger because we won't give up our rights. And because we know how our Second Amendment is tied directly to our freedom and how it's tied directly to the safety of our families. They don't see that piece. They only see us as these evil people who want to, who would rather watch children die than give up our rights. None of it's true.
Yeah.
But that's the way it goes. It's fear and hate are the motivators.
And I was just going to add, it's they're clearly spoon feeding the next generation to where this fear is just simply going to grow from being, a discomfort or a dislike to where the next generation is truly not going to understand, and they're going to have a true deep rooted fear down the road.
Absolutely, and that's why they're trying to create all sorts of laws around ammo. Now there's all sorts of taxes they want to attach to ammo. They want to, now in New York we have this new ammo background check system, because what they're trying to do is discourage people from going to the range. Because when you can do that, if you can discourage parents from bringing their children to the range, those kids are going to grow up real quick. Kids grow up real quick. I know. I got a 24-year-old now, and his childhood went by so quick. If I didn't take him to the range and he was subjected to all this anti-gun stuff, he would grow up as an anti-gunner. And that's the idea. Keep people away from the range. Keep people away from practicing. Keep parents away from teaching their kids about guns. And you create the next generation, just like you said, it's the next generation of either non-gun owners or anti-gunners.
I agree with that. I think that's one, it would almost give me pause, or at least I might actually spend more time reevaluating my position if I saw a lot of pro-gun people move to an anti-gun position. But I got to tell you, what I see are a lot of anti-gun people who get educated or they have an experience and they move to a pro-Second Amendment position. And I've seen neutral people who didn't really have much of an opinion move to, pro or anti. But I got to tell you, it's one big advantage we have. It's a lot more fun to learn how to shoot a gun than it is to learn how to ban one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's really funny. It's comical, because I'll watch on Twitter. I'll follow Every Town and Mom's Demand and David Hogg and all these nut jobs, and they put these posts out, these anti-gun posts. Time to ban assault weapon, whatever their thing is.
Right.
The ban du jour, and the entire comment section is like hundreds of people completely destroying them. They have no support on their social media at all. It's so funny, because it's interesting what's driving them to keep going. And that's where I start to question, okay, there's something else behind them, behind Every Town, behind Mom's Demand, because if you got that much hate online, you just turn your computer off. It just doesn't make sense. But they still do it. So there's money behind it. These people are just the tools out there being used to push the agenda, and they get bashed and beat up and slaughtered on their own social media sites. It's beautiful.
Well, I think there's two things. There's two things behind it. I think one of the more practical, or machine-like things is that obviously the Democratic Party this is a winner in their mind. Like they go, hey, whatever, we don't care about the issue. What we care about is it helps us get Democrats elected. But I think the harder thing that they all have in common, the thing that's harder to overcome, is a lot of the anti-gun leaders, Feinstein, Hogg, a lot of them, almost all of them, have had a horrible traumatic experience where a gun or somebody with a gun was involved. And I think, and that's hard to overcome, but what it does is it's turned them into an irrational person who they have an emotional response. Yeah. And it's hard. I got to tell you, you're a superhero. If you go through a horrible traumatic experience and you come out rational, no matter what it is, a gun or whatever the tool is, but if you come out rational with a rational opinion, you're a superhero. If you come out damaged, if you come out irrational, that's almost normal. But they don't excuse themselves from the discussion. They can't say, hey, you know what? I've had this horrible experience. A gun was involved. I can't really make a rational decision. They become leaders in this movement. But it's really, really difficult to overcome that.
Well, who's the Parkland father? I forget his name. His daughter.
Yeah, he was here.
Meadow.
Andrew
Pollock.
Yeah, Andrew Pollock. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He went the other way because he was rational, and he understood that if the teachers there or if the staff had a gun, they could have protected his daughter. And I went the other way too. And you guys may not know this, but there was a time in my life when I was running around with rock bands, and I was kind of hanging with the wrong crowd, the liberal crowd, and I was kind of anti-gun myself.
I like that. That's what was wrong with the crowd. You're like, yeah, I was hanging out with this was kind of a rough crowd. They were liberals.
There were
I'll bet you that wasn't the worst thing that was going on.
I say I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. People think it was bank robbers and drug dealers. No, it was liberals. Are you kidding me? But I had a situation in my life with my wife and I when we came out of a late night movie theater, and I tell the story in my first book, Good Gun, Bad Guy. We came out of a late night movie theater. We had this run-in with this guy, and we made it out okay. We were safe, and everything was fine, but it was just enough to make me rethink my whole position. Yeah. And everything from that night on changed. My whole entire life changed because I started to see from a different perspective. I could see the danger. I could see my responsibility to protect my wife and my son and myself. And that night, I told my wife, I said, "I'm sorry. I don't know if I would have been able to protect you if I needed to." I said, "I'm getting a gun," and everything changed. And from that moment on, my whole life just opened up. And then I started doing the research, and then I started to see how it was that I had been manipulated myself. And I started studying the terminology and the narrative and the rhetoric and the propaganda. And that's what I started writing about. And I've been writing about it ever since. And it goes deep, but it's really interesting how people can be so manipulated. But some of us can see through it and make a change and hopefully, help other people do the same.
Dan, how can people how can people follow you or read more? Or where would you like to point them? Because I really want to make sure that people know who you are and follow you and learn more about you and listen to your voice.
Well, my book series is Good Gun, Bad Guy, so you can go to goodgunbadguy.com. I have a web show called The Loaded Mic. We talk about Second Amendment stuff. We also talk about politics of the day. It's a lot of fun. Great show. You're going to love it.
I should do an alcohol. Dave. We should do an alcohol show where we talk about like bourbon or whatever, and I could call it The Loaded Mic. Right?
I like that. Would be... and you could drink on the job.
That's right. I'd be the loaded mic.
Michael was on our show, by the way, once. Right?
Yeah, he got loaded.
Yes.
Now he can't remember.
I was definitely unloaded. Okay, cool, Dan. So
that's loadedmic.com or goodgunbadguy.com.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Thank you so much, man. It's
always great talking to you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, guys. Anytime. Bye-bye.
All right.
Cool guy, right?
That was really cool.
That was cool. I really like that guy. I think he's very well spoken. I think he comes from a good,
very down to earth, very black and white.
And I like that he speaks from a place of where, like you said, he was on the other side. And I think people that can kind of say that and show that transition, they have a lot of power.
I mean, we talk to like warriors all the time. We talk to like SEALs and cops and whatever. And he's just this. He was a musician. He was just kind of a regular guy. And I don't know. It's a nice, fresh perspective every now and then.
I don't know. We talked to comic book guys.
He's a superhero in a whole different way, isn't he? Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. If you're watching mainstream media, you're not getting the truth about guns. Gun Owners Radio is the easiest way to stay on top of the Second Amendment fight, the fight for your self-defense rights. You can watch our live stream on YouTube every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, or if you're in San Diego, AM 1170, FM 96.1, The Answer. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Gun Owners Radio and you'll find our show. Like and subscribe to help defend and restore the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.